Good evening and welcome to the Caroline Haslett Lecture in 2021. My name is Elizabeth Donnelly and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Women's Engineering Society, and I'm delighted to welcome you all today. Excuse me. So this evening's agenda is I'm just going to go through some housekeeping notes in a short while. I'm going to introduce you to a welcome from Dawn Childs, our president, and then we will have the presentation of the Amy Johnson Inspiration and Menas Allies Awards. Then this will be followed by the Caroline Haslett Lecture by Dame Joe De Silva, the Global Director of Sustainable Development at Arup. And there will be a Q&A hosted by Dawn Childs, FRN WES President. Following the question and answer, there will be the Karen Burt Memorial Award, and we will announce the winner of the Karen Burt Memorial Award, and she will then give a presentation of her chartered project. And then again, there will be another Q&A hosted by Dawn Childs at the end, before I then thank you all and say good evening. You'll see that there is a chat where you can talk to people in the chat, and a Q&A. Trust me to get a frog in my throat right at the most inappropriate moment. If you have questions during the presentations, if you would like to put them into the Q&A area. Now, it may look like your question disappears, but what I'm actually doing is publishing it so that everyone can see it. So if you have put it in and you think, where's it gone? Don't worry, it's been published and should be available to everybody else. So we are recording this session, so you will be able to view the content again if you miss anything. You should be able to see and hear us as well as the presentation. And if you're having problems with your audio, check your settings in the side panel. You'll see to your right, there is a chat and a Q&A feature. So use the chat for any technical problems or to generally talk, and the Q&A when we're prompted to ask questions. And we hope you enjoy this session and having the opportunity to comment and take part in the chat. And it is now my, on our social media tags, our actual Twitter handle is @WES1919. And if you can look for hashtag Caroline Haslett and hashtag WES Awards 2021, that would be absolutely lovely. And it is now my very great pleasure to introduce you to Dawn Childs, FRN, the President of the Women's Engineering Society.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and good evening, everybody. I'm so pleased that so many of you have been able to join us for our annual Caroline Haslett Lecture. I won't steal everybody's or eat everybody's sandwiches by preempting too much the awards and the lecture itself, but I have to say that we have got a great programme for you this evening, and I have never seen so many difficult choices having to be made for the winners of our awards, so it's a really great evening to be doing this. I will introduce Dame Jo shortly, but first of all, we're going to go to the first of our prizes, and I'm going to hand over to Charisma, I think, who will talk you through the award, and then we'll go through the worthy recipients.
Great, thank you so much, Dawn, and good evening, everybody. Launched in 2016 was the Amy Johnson Inspiration Award that honours a person currently working in a non-engineering role who's made significant progress to further diversity within engineering and applied sciences. It's an award that recognises the efforts of an individual who inspires women to enter and remain in the engineering and technical professions, whilst really also showcasing truly remarkable achievements that go above and beyond the norm. Pre-pandemic, engineering skills was on the UK skills shortage list. We are still in the pandemic, and many of my friends and families are having similar discussions in their industries. For example, my brother is a dentist and is having trouble in recruiting a dental nurse. If many other industries are facing shortages, then we will have to fight even harder to get the right skills in engineering. And for me, that's why diversity in engineering and these awards are so important. Diversity is a topic that is coming to the forefront of public consciousness, but we as a society need to do more. And by highlighting individuals who are breaking that glass ceiling, we hope that it can inspire others to do the same within engineering, applied sciences, and beyond. It's an award that means a lot to us and an honour that truly embodies what we're trying to achieve here at the Women's Engineering Society. I'd really like to thank all the judges who supported me in this really difficult process. I was truly astounded by the calibre of all the applications and the amount of work that these people have done to promote engineering. And with that in mind, I am honoured to share the names of our finalists. And the first, Dr. Miranda K. Braun, founder and CEO of the Miranda Braun Diversity Leadership Foundation. And second, Rose Russell, Art and Design and Technician and STEM Coordinator at the Ursuline Academy of Ilford. And thirdly, Dr. Shiny Samara, Media Producer and Reporter in Science and Technology. It really does give me great pleasure to announce that the 2021 Amy Johnson Inspiration Award goes to Rose Russell. Congratulations, Rose.
Congratulations, Rose, indeed. And the reason why Rose Russell is a deserved winner is without any previous experience, Rose dedicated her personal time in 2010 to start a science, technology, engineering and maths club and learn how to inspire pupils to join. In doing so, she changed perceptions, stereotypes and aspirations for girls of all ages and began to lead many groups of pupils through the national science and engineering competitions, where her teams won several national awards and had projects that caught the eye of Princess Anne and former Prime Minister David Cameron. Within a year, she built up a support network of incredible role models. She swayed Yawanda Akinolo MBE to help pupils with the Big Bang Fair project. Using her persuasive skills, the Institute of Physics awarded £1,000 and 5 role model visits to the school to mark the Year of Engineering for 2018. Rose secured bursaries and funding of around £10,000 to guarantee free STEM events for all students and prepared pupils crowdfunding to raise over £1,000 for STEM equipment. In addition, her tireless hard work has won the support of the school leaders and formed part of its 2015 to 2017 improvement plan to remain a centre of excellence for STEM. Rose also sits on 3 STEM boards and has introduced the Arkwright Scholarship and Crest Award, determined to involve the wider community, and was also involved in the school's many Faraday Challenge days. All of this shines a light on how she has ushered in a new era of domination for extracurricular activities for girls beyond the classroom. It reflects a decade of inspiring STEM impact, and with 29 years of experience, her role has extended beyond a technician. Rose's achievements are once more akin to a subject leader, but the fact that this has all been achieved on an exclusively voluntary basis is awe-inspiring. And I'd like to share with you an acceptance thank you from Rose.
Oh my goodness, wow. Oh my goodness, wow. That's insane. Thank you so much. That's incredible. I mean, to be considered worthy of being on that shortlist with the 2 other finalists, Dr. Miranda and Dr. Sheeny, 2 phenomenal role models. For me, that was a personal victory. But to receive this award, well, that's a win for all those who have supported me along this journey. And I feel it's only right that I should mention some names. My head teacher, Karen Riley, my colleagues, Naima Riaz, Tina Darcy, Catherine Finley, Cody Peku, Edna Riley, and Paul Finn and Ray Butler. And of course to WES for choosing me as your winner. Not forgetting my family, but most importantly, this award is a victory for all those hundreds of students over the past 10 years who have embraced the opportunities that we've offered to our students and who have gone on to pursue STEM-related careers. This really does mean a lot to me because without them, I wouldn't be standing here. So once again, thank you so much. Thank you again.
Congratulations again, Rose. I feel like I need to give you a clap because it's hard doing this as online. I'd now like to hand over to Susan, a fellow trustee for WES.
Thanks, Charisma, and what lovely words from Rose there. Well done, Rose, and well done to all the Amy Johnson Inspiration Award finalists. So now we move on to the Menas Allies Award, and this award is to celebrate a male engineer or a professional man working within engineering, technical and applied science sectors who has gone above and beyond the call of duty to support his female colleagues and address the gender imbalance within engineering and applied sciences. The importance of allyship in addressing issues of inequality cannot be underestimated, and it's a key tool in our mission at WES to create an engineering industry that reflects the society it serves. In allies, we observe the marks of the best kind of leadership, the ability to empathise with those whose lived experience are not those of our own, and the recognition that strong teams are made up of individuals with diverse strengths. It is therefore with great pleasure that we read this year's entries for the WES Menas Allies Award, and with a huge sense of pride that WES is in a position to recognise the good work that's being done. Our finalists haven't just been good managers or colleagues, a bar we thankfully recognise as low, but have demonstrated the willingness to look beyond their own story, recognise barriers experienced by others, and reach in to offer practical and impressive support. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all my fellow judges who've done an excellent job in reading through the applications and coming up with a short list. And obviously, thank you to all our entrants. On behalf of WES, on behalf of the individuals you've helped, and on behalf of the allies of tomorrow, to whom you all act as role models. So our finalists this year are Stephen Gill. Have we got some slides to go with that? Stephen, great. Dr. Andy Palmer and Jason Watson-Massey. And I'm really delighted to announce that the winner this year is Dr. Andy Palmer. So I think we may have a video from Dr. Palmer. Elizabeth, do you know if we've got a video from Dr. Palmer?
Yes, sorry, I'm just going to read the citation for his
perfect.
reason for his winnings.
Thank you.
Trying to do 10 things behind the scenes as well. So Dr. Andy Palmer is a world-renowned automotive leader, having led transformation at two of the global vehicle brands, Nissan and Aston Martin, which included supporting his female colleagues while addressing gender imbalances. In addition, he's also the founder of the Palmer Foundation, a champion for apprenticeships for disadvantaged youths, including supporting future female engineers. He also supported the Miranda Braun Diversity Leadership Foundation's Engineering and Prince's Trust scholarships through mentoring female engineers, judging and public speaking at the annual Diversity Leadership Lecture events to empower and inspire our next generation of engineers. Dr. Palmer has also worked on intersectionality issues affecting gender, which include race and social mobility diversity. His active leadership message is taken from the basic principles that we are all equal and that for an organisation to thrive, we must embrace the best talent, no matter what. This was most obvious in Nissan, where he overcame many cultural biases to accelerate the promotion of women. He did this by having all women that applied for a role go straight through to final interview without being filtered out. They still had to be the best for the role in the final interview, but this avoided the filtering. In both Nissan and Aston Martin, his selection of technical assistants included choosing bright young women, allowing them to shadow him for 2 years and quickly pick up experience. One of those, Nikki Rimington, went on to become Vice President of Planning for Aston and therefore one of the most senior women in the car engineering business. Aston Martin made women central to their strategy and adopted a very progressive attitude towards female buyers too. They had recruited an all-female advisory board to guide them on how to design a model that will appeal to women. They also brought out an electric model too, as women are typically more influenced by environmental ESG factors. And this iconic brand discovered that focusing on women customers makes good business sense. More recently, he has played a key role in helping women of colour in the engineering boardroom by recommending Dr. Miranda Braun to join the board of Switch Mobility Limited as a non-executive director. So many congratulations to Dr. Palmer, and we have a video from him as well.
It's a huge honour to be considered an ally of women in engineering, and I accept this prize with great humility. And not enough has been done in engineering to balance the input of female engineers. I speak from an automotive point of view, and I speak as someone that's tried their best to give best opportunities to the fantastic women that come into engineering, and therein lies part of the key. We need to encourage more women into engineering. We need best female talent to be recognised and promoted and become part of the decision-making bodies that basically therefore help the next generation and the next generation of women coming into engineering. My ultimate point, of course, is that the more women in engineering, the better the product, because ultimately both men and women are recipients of the things that we engineers, particularly in the car industry. And I simply believe that having more talented women involved in engineering just makes products better. Again, huge honour to be awarded this this ally of women engineers, and I thank you very much.
Fantastic. That's great words.
Brilliant, yes.
We handing back to Dawn now? Oh.
And yes, we're now handing back to Dawn for the Caroline Haslett.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Elizabeth. And wow, what a lineup of finalists and fantastic winners for both of those prizes. But of course, now we come to the main event this evening, which is our Caroline Haslett lecture. And tonight we're really grateful that we've been joined by Dame Joe De Silva. And I have to say, truly humbled in her presence. She's currently the Global Director of Sustainable Development at Arup, and she leads the activities to address climate, biodiversity and equity crises through creating safe, inclusive and resilient communities while safeguarding the planet. She's also an Arup Fellow and promotes excellence and innovation, delivering social outcomes. And she's earned global recognition as an engineer who's applied knowledge and design expertise to improve safety, promote inclusivity, and enhance resilience of communities, cities, and infrastructure globally. She's highly decorated, and not only has she written numerous papers and publications, receiving an honorary doctorate in humanitarian engineering from Coventry University, and she's also a fellow at Sydney, Sussex, Cambridge University, lecturing in engineering for sustainable development and contributing to the guest faculty of the Cambridge Programme for Sustainable Leadership. She founded in 2007 the Arup International Development to enable Arup to direct their technical excellence and creativity into improving human development outcomes in the Global South, working with national and local government and community-based organisations, as well as international agencies such as the World Bank, International Federation of the Red Cross and the Rockefeller Foundation. But most recently in 2016, she co-founded the Resilience Shift to raise awareness and drive action to improve the resilience of critical infrastructure globally. And she's currently the board director there. She was made a Dame Commander of the British Empire this year. And previously she had an OBE for her services to humanitarian relief and was awarded the gold medal by the Institution of Structural Engineers in 2017. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the highly acclaimed Dame Joe De Silva. Thank you very much, Joe. Over to you. Sorry, Joe, you're still on mute. There you go. Thank you.
Apologies, everyone. Thank you for that very generous introduction and for inviting me to give this lecture this evening. The Women in Engineering Society was actually founded in 1984, which was the year that I was doing my A-levels and wondering what to apply for at university. Engineering appealed to me because it was creative, and I felt it was an opportunity to do something tangible that made a difference to people's lives. It was through WES that my school was able to arrange visits to engineering firms, and I'm pretty sure that it was WES that gave my teachers the confidence to encourage me to apply to study engineering at Cambridge. It was only after my father died 20 years ago that I found a letter he wrote to my headmaster that expressed his reservations as to whether this was really a suitable career for a young lady. And I wonder whether without WES, the headmaster might have echoed rather than refuted his concerns, and if so, I certainly wouldn't be here today. It was a real honour earlier this year to be named as one of WES's top 50 women in engineering 2021, particularly because the list also includes 5 of my remarkable Arab colleagues, mostly much younger than myself. And their expertise embraces geotechnics, water, natural hazards, climate change, geotechnics, and complex projects, all of which are specialist fields that have been important in my work, which, as my career has progressed over the last 30 years, has just focused more and more on applying engineering expertise to reduce vulnerability and improve lives. When I got the doctorate, honorary doctorate from Coventry University, it was an honorary doctorate for being a humanitarian engineer. Up until then, I'd sort of described myself as a civil engineer, a structural engineer. I'm chartered with both institutions. But a humanitarian engineer is a phrase that was coined by a joint research programme across the whole of the UK, and is really about applying your skills and knowledge and expertise to help others, and mostly others sort of less fortunate than oneself. I've received an unsolicited amount of attention and recognition for my endeavours. The picture on the left is winning the gold medal from the Institution of Structural Engineers, and I was the first woman to win it, which actually astonished me when I realised that. And then yesterday, I was at Windsor Castle, where I was officially made a dame by Prince Charles, and I thought you'd be amused to see this picture of me in a hat. My hope is that these accolades simply reflect the growing recognition of the vital role that engineering plays in society. And perhaps my journey will inspire others to follow their convictions and be bold. I was very much taken by WES's theme for 2021 of engineering heroes. The award celebrated the best, the brightest, the bravest women in engineering who recognize a problem and then dare to be part of the solution. And I hope many of you recognize those characteristics in yourselves. I'm sure the award winners do. We all have the potential to do something brave, to stand up for what we believe in and to achieve great things. As David Bowie used to say, we can all be heroes, even if only for one day. Mostly as engineers, we have a reputation of being problem solvers, but our capabilities, when they're married with confidence and courage, turn us into innovators and pioneers. And that's something the world needs. It's engineers that 50 years ago enabled Apollo to land on the moon. And today it's engineers who are at the forefront of the battle against climate change, designing wind turbines, solar arrays, electric vehicles, and hydrogen trains. It's engineers who are developing the technology to remove methane and carbon from the atmosphere. It's engineers who are enabling communities in Africa to have access to potable water, sanitation, and energy that will transform their lives by reducing sickness, enabling girls to go to schools because they don't have to collect water any longer, enable them to power mobile phones and benefit from online banking transfers and access to information. Engineers are simply essential to building a sustainable future, a world that is safer, fairer, and more resilient, and safeguards our planet for future generations. Engineers also have capabilities that are essential to saving lives and reducing suffering. I found that out for myself working in post-disaster situations, and I'll come on to some of that later. But we are not sufficiently recognised for the fact that we actually design the infrastructure that underpins economic development and human well-being. We work with architects and urban planners to create the stage set on which life plays out. We work alongside doctors, nurses, social workers, and pharmaceutical companies to contribute to a healthcare system that has risen to the challenge of a global pandemic, designing hospitals, medical equipment, ambulances, roads, and information systems, providing water and power. But serving society in this way is not how engineers are portrayed by the media, or how we often tend to think about ourselves. Yet it is why I became an engineer, and at 18 I wrote an essay, The Role of Engineering in Society, for the Institution of Civil Engineers, which won me £500 bursary a year on the Queen Jubilee Scholarship. It's the role that engineers play in society, which is why I'm proud to be an engineer, and why it matters so much that we encourage more women to become engineers. And therefore, I really applaud the work that WES has done throughout my career, and the change that's created in the number of women in the profession, but also the way in which the role that we play in the profession, which is just so much more noticeable. And it is changing the conversations. It's changing the industry in which we work. When I studied at university, engineering was simply about technology. As you all know, it's also about people. And in my final year at university, I chose a module called Work, Society and Technology from the Manufacturing Engineering course. And I look back now and think that perhaps this is what set the course of what I've done since. On that module, we explored the interface between work, society, and technology. We examined the implications of computers on the printing industry, of robots on car manufacture, of ATMs on personal banking, and the societal shifts that this had created in terms of employment, gender equality, and attitudes to money. Then it was the switch from coal to North Sea oil, the emergence of computers that were fueling significant transformation in society in the UK. And I believe that a parallel can be drawn now with digital transformation and the switch from oil and gas to wind and solar power that will take place over the next decade. For me, society was on the agenda from my university days, but it wasn't until the late 90s that the environment became a key consideration, with the introduction of environmental impact assessments on major infrastructure projects, BREEAM assessments to rate the sustainability performance of buildings, as designed, not necessarily operated, but they did start us thinking in the right direction. Environmental engineers emerged as a new discipline, and they were closely followed by sustainability consultants. But for me, it was my own personal experiences working in northwest Tanzania during the Rwandan genocide that really woke me up to the importance of the environment. And it was 1994, when I went out to Rwanda, that really set the course of the rest of my career, that is really focused on the role engineering plays in reducing vulnerability and improving well-being, particularly of communities that are significantly less well off than many of the communities here in the UK. I'd become a member of REDAR, which is a charity some of you may have heard of, which focuses on training and deploying engineers to post-disaster situations in 1991. And I was in my early 20s, and I invested many weekends training to be effective in a post-disaster situation. That meant putting up water tanks in fields in Buckinghamshire or building Bailey bridges in Wales. And in 1994, I was called up and asked to go and work for Concern, an Irish NGO, who was setting up and managing camps in a remote area in northwest Tanzania. The picture that you see on the left, I took as I flew over Banaco, a sea of blue plastic sheeting clinging to twigs and branches to provide shelter to the 400,000 people who had fled Rwanda and arrived there in a matter of a few days. The forest was walking backwards like a retreating army as it was cut down for building shelters and firewood, and the water level in the lake was going down daily. Over the next few weeks, we distributed soap and pots and pans. We built latrines, roads and temporary hospitals, food distribution centres and warehouses. Out of the chaos emerged the second largest settlement in Tanzania at the time, which you can see at the right, on the right. This experience taught me two really important lessons. The first, of course, was the incredible negative impact that we as human beings can have on the environment. Our planet is our sole resource, now and for future generations. The second thing was the vital role that engineers play in protecting that resource and enabling it to benefit as many people as possible, including access to remote resources brought in by trucks and planes. And the lake, instead of running dry, that water source was secured by Oxfam and became the main water source for all the people living in the camp. When I returned to the UK from that assignment, I was very clear that what I wanted to do was continue to use my skills and expertise to serve society. I wasn't really interested anymore in designing commercial office blocks. And as a recently chartered engineer, I was in high demand in the company. And so I sought out project directors who were in charge of projects which I felt had a direct benefit to the public. I worked on Wembley Park Underground Station, the refurbishment of the National Portrait Gallery, and the Royal Geographical Society, both important cultural institutions. And then various schools and academies and community projects, mostly in poorer communities in London, in Tower Hamlets, in Merton, in Newham boroughs. The engineering may have been less technically heroic compared to some of my previous projects, such as Chet Blackhawk Airport, but these projects were challenging in different ways. Rather than being primarily concerned with technical parameters and, of course, cost, these projects required an understanding of economic, environmental, and social parameters. Their value wasn't just about financial returns on investment, but about the social benefits of education, culture, community, and transport for society, and by extension, the benefit to the economy. As a previous boss said to me at the time, Joe, the technology is actually the easy bit. It's the people involved that make what we do interesting. Perhaps I would have continued to design social infrastructure in the UK and to work part-time as a fellow at Cambridge University if the Indian Ocean tsunami had not happened on Boxing Day 2004. Several weeks later, I was asked to go and work in Sri Lanka for UNHCR. This offered an opportunity to serve as a global citizen as part of the United Nations, helping the Sri Lankan government with recovery and reconstruction. Over 9 months, I led a nationwide program to deal with the 500,000 people who were left homeless as their houses had been destroyed or very badly damaged. And I was involved coordinating the efforts of 100 NGOs to construct sort of 60,000 transitional shelters in 6 months. You can see many of them here, and on the one hand, they're all very different. On the other hand, they're all roughly the same. And it's that latter point that was incredibly important, because what mattered was the performance specification that I developed, which was sort of setting out the standards for each shelter in terms of size, in terms of height, in terms of openings, in terms of lockable doors and windows. And that was important so that every family got approximately the same, so as to avoid tensions in the community, which could have caused social breakdown. And as you can see here, people were pretty inventive about the materials that we built out of. The shelters I designed is the one on the bottom row, third from the left, whereas I was using a variety of materials to design a shelter that I hoped would last for several years. And I've been back to Sri Lanka, and many of these shelters still exist. Often now they're used as extra rooms or storage for families. When I returned to the UK from Sri Lanka, I decided that I just wanted to do more, and more than I could do on my own. And so I founded a new business in Arup called Arup International Development. And the purpose of it was to mobilize and direct Arup skills and expertise towards reducing vulnerability and improving the resilience of communities in Africa, in South and Southeast Asia. And when Braulio Moreira, a Chilean, joined the team, we expanded our remit to include Latin America. Arup's already had a charitable program, which in fact I'd helped start many years before. But what I felt very strongly is that we as a firm could do more than we could do through that charitable program. The thing with charitable programs is that they're limited by the amount of time staff are prepared to put in voluntarily, and then what we as a firm could fund corporately through our profits. And so AID was really a new business model. What I argued for was that we should operate on an at cost, not for profit, or probably more accurately, not for loss basis, recognizing that the value to us as an organization was in the new opportunities this type of work created for our staff, and the opportunity to contribute to parts of society that our commercial work was not really able to reach. Over the next decade, we did the most amazing projects. And I went to, we started off going, carrying on working in the Indian Ocean tsunami. I went to Aceh, Indonesia, to carry out an evaluation of the reconstruction for the Disasters Emergency Committee. The impact of the tsunami in Aceh was just devastating, as you can see from this picture on the right. I mean, literally, it had destroyed everything. And the reconstruction was gathering momentum sort of 18 months later. But the question I was addressing was it really making the most of the opportunity to build back better? In the haste to rebuild, the importance of designing houses and schools and hospitals to withstand future earthquakes was sometimes overlooked. In fact, people had failed to realize that actually the tsunami was caused by an earthquake. And, you know, sometimes I was having conversations with people and explaining that, you know, that was the real issue. And as we've seen recently, Indonesia suffers from other issues, you know, volcanoes, flooding, other natural hazards. And the real opportunity about building back better was to create communities that were more resilient. And that isn't just about building things more strongly. It's about the opportunity to reskill and upskill local people. Instead of simply writing the report that I'd been commissioned to produce by the Disasters Emergency Committee, I encouraged them to create something that was publicly available, so that the learning from the experience in Indonesia could be used to inform future reconstruction efforts. And this publication on the left was published by Practical Action and has been used in Haiti, in Pakistan, many earthquake-related events subsequently. We've been real supporters of vernacular construction. As a structural civil engineer, you know, most of what I was taught at university and did in my early career was based around designing in steel and concrete. But actually, you know, communities around the world have non-engineered buildings, which are very safe because they're vernacular construction that's become safe through trial and error. This slide shows a form of construction called Daiji Dwari in Pakistan, which is highly earthquake resistant and exists in many variations all around the world in earthquake areas. We also designed flood resilient mud housing in Pakistan following the devastating floods there, stone masonry construction in Haiti, bamboo structures in the Rohingya camps in Bangladesh. And in Ghana, we created a new typology for kindergartens using timber and bamboo. And we called this one the IKEA construction because they're doing the finishing touches, but this building is actually very modular. And so we had teams of people building roof trusses and other teams building bamboo shutters. Everyone got a certificate, and then they went on to build other schools afterwards. But the idea of these buildings was they were modular, so that we could train up local people to build them and really upskill them in the process, so they could go on to create to carry out jobs subsequently. It's perhaps buildings like this that give me the biggest joy. Every time I see this photo, I just remember the noise in the classroom. It was absolutely deafening. We designed a school for a capacity of 30 kids per classroom. You can see just how many kids are here. And, the bamboo shutters, which was a sort of innovative way of regulating the temperature, which varies quite a lot from morning to evening, were also part of the play and the fun for kids. And that was very much what this project was about, is getting away from the very heavy concrete closed buildings that are typically used in Africa to teach kids, and to create an environment which was really conducive to kids learning through play, which is very much how we teach kids here in the UK. Unfortunately, a lot of our work has responded to disasters. In 2021, the earthquake in Nepal destroyed about 20,000 schools, and it left almost 1 million children affected. I think the really sobering thing is that this earthquake happened on a Friday. 870,000 kids had nowhere to go to school the next morning. When you look at a picture like this, it's worth just pausing and thinking, sorry, the earthquake happened on a Saturday. When you look at this picture, it's worth pausing and thinking about what might have happened if the earthquake had happened on a weekday. Rather than 1 million kids having nowhere to go to school, a very large number of those kids would have died. In Nepal, we provided the technical expertise to survey and quantify the damage, and a lot of technical guidance and training on retrofitting for a very big program that DFID funded to improve the safety of 2,500 schools. And those schools, we also improved the facilities for toilets and hand washing. And one of the things I'm really proud that the team did is they also pioneered consideration of menstrual hygiene, which we discovered was a very important factor in girls missing schools. And we're hoping that's something that's going to sort of certainly get into the mainstream of donor-funded schools going forwards. This work is built on work that we've done in about 12 countries with the World Bank, exploring the issues behind unsafe schools. It's pretty staggering, but thousands of school buildings actually collapse every year because of earthquakes, or because of strong winds damage the roofs, or rainfall damages the roofs, and then there isn't money or means to repair. And the result is that kids have nowhere to go to school. And we've learned here in the UK the impact of lost school days on school children, and the importance of schools and the important role schools play, not just in educating our kids, but in enabling parents to go to work, enabling children to create social skills from social interaction, and not just the lessons that they learn. And the global program for safe schools, which we've been doing with the World Bank for about 8 years now, has created a whole series of publications. I've just put 3 on this slide, which really sort of helps understand the underlying issues behind why schools are built too often in a rush or with lack of technical expertise, and as a result, they do get damaged, and children's schooling is badly interrupted. As International Development Team grew, so did the scale and complexity of the projects that we got involved with. This is a rather astonishing slide of the Rana Plaza factory, which collapsed in Bangladesh. It was a garment factory. 1,200 people were killed, and 2,500 others were very badly injured. But perhaps even more significant than the loss of life and injury was the reality that there were very many other factories in Bangladesh that were probably also unsafe, either structurally because they'd added additional floors, or were putting very heavy loads on the floors from sort of garments that were piled up. And, there'd also been a very big fire a month or so previously as a result of the sort of the fluff from the cotton taking off and creating a fire as a result of an electrical fault. And there was a lot of loss of faith by the people buying garments from these companies. And I'm talking about, household names, companies like Zara, Tommy Hilfiger, Calvin Klein, whose products are actually made in factories like this in Bangladesh. The garment manufacturing industry there employs about 4 million women, and it represents about 70% of the economy. So the reality was that if those companies stopped buying garments from Bangladesh, very, very many people would lose their livelihoods, and the overall economy of Bangladesh would suffer hugely. We spent about 3 years supporting the government on this project to survey 3,500 factories. We found about 2/3 of them needed remedial works, and then we carried on working with the government to initiate a retrofitting program that has improved the safety and has kept that industry going. The other thing that I wanted to really sort of mention was the sort of key learning from all of this work. I mentioned earlier that, I think engineering is not just about technology, it's about people. And one of the things that all this work overseas has really taught me is the importance of consultation, but not just consultation, also participation with communities. This was work we were doing with the Red Cross, Red Crescent, and cities. And this is one of very many consultations we had with cities as part of the 100 Resilient Cities programme. I'm left with a very firm belief that unless we are purposefully inclusive, we are inadvertently exclusive. We all need to reach out and serve the poorest and the most vulnerable in society, just as we need to ensure that engineering workforces include women from diverse cultures and backgrounds so that we represent the societies we serve. And that's why the work of WES is so fundamentally important. Oops, I'm sorry. The other thing that I've really learned is that as well as safety and inclusivity, resilience needs to be a central tenet of what we do as engineers. We need to do our utmost to create safe structures that contribute to the safety of communities. But we also need to recognize that the world we live in is characterized by inequity, complexity, and uncertainty. So inequity, complexity, and uncertainty. Those are the three things that I think really define the 21st century. We can't predict the future, but we can ensure that society is able to respond when adverse circumstances arise. And that's really what resilience is all about. And I think that's something we all now inherently understand much better as a result of navigating the challenges COVID has created for all of us, professionally and personally. People ask me what I worry about, and one of the things I worry about is actually infrastructure failure, because if power systems go down, you get tens of thousands of people in the tropics who don't have access to cooling and therefore die of heat stroke. Or if you have power going down in Canada, people are freezing, and we had that in the north of England just recently. The Resilient Shift is an initiative I helped 5 years ago to create, which seeks to make resilience sort of central to the design of infrastructure. So for those of you who are infrastructure engineers, I really encourage you to have a look at the Resilient Shift website. I wanted to end really by just simply sharing with you sort of what I'm doing now, which is the question I tend to get asked, having shared my journey to date. My role as Global Sustainable Development Leader in Arup came about 2 or 3 years ago, when we as a firm decided that we wanted to focus our efforts on creating a sustainable future and really focus on helping contribute towards the Sustainable Development Goals. We believe the Sustainable Development Goals paint a picture of what a better world looks like. And Arup's mission statement is to create a better world. And so what I've been doing over the last couple of years is engaging with the 16,000 people who work for Arup, helping them understand what sustainable development really means and how we put that into practice. We've made some bold commitments this year to get out of hydrocarbons, so no more oil and gas. We're introducing whole life carbon costing on our projects so that we can understand the impacts of our projects on carbon emissions much more deeply, and therefore make much better decisions for our clients. We're on a journey. What we do is done hand in hand with our clients. So it's very much about engaging with them as well as engaging with our colleagues. But it's also about trying to create systemic change in the industry in which we work. And this picture is of me at COP last month, where I was standing up on the last day at COP, which was Regions, Cities and Built Environment Day. And my message was very clear. It was the fact that the built environment, the buildings, the infrastructure that we all rely on, contributes to 40% of global emissions. And this is something that hasn't had a great deal of attention to date. And it's something that all of us who are involved in any aspect of the built environment, whether it's designing automotive vehicles or whether it's designing roads or bridges or buildings, we really have to look at extremely seriously, because we need to halve emissions in that sector over the next decade. So I, get up every morning, and I still, get up every morning thinking, what's my job? My job is to make the world a better place. My mantra is simply taken from Mahatma Gandhi. It's to live the change you want to see in the world. And I think that's simply about living authentically and putting the skills and expertise that I have to good use. I feel very fortunate that 30-something years ago, I made a decision to study engineering at university. I'm pretty sure that WES had a role to play in that. And I've had a very interesting and rewarding career as a result of it. Thank you.
Goodness me, Dame Jo, thank you so much. That was truly inspirational, and yeah, I cannot believe that WES and our spin-off campaign that formed WISE had anything to do with starting your career journey, which is just simply breathtaking, and you definitely are living the change. That is incredible. As I'm sure you'd imagine, there's a flurry of questions in the chat, so I'm just going to field a few of them for you. Just take a few moments more, if I may. I'm going to conflate a couple. So Lucy Rogers, who I think is the inaccessible science lady in the gold jacket, wants to know. Humanitarian is very difficult to get into, and she wants to understand the first steps, particularly for experienced engineers. But I'm going to tag on to that because Helen Bickett has also asked, how do newly qualified engineers get into it, into these important projects, because it's difficult without experience. So it seems it's difficult both with and without experience. So any advice, please? Yeah,
so I mean, the first thing I'd say is that if I go back sort of 20 years, the word humanitarian was very much associated with rushing off overseas to respond to disasters that happened in other places. I think what we're increasingly realizing is the disasters happen on our doorstep, and we can all get involved in different ways. So here in the UK, the British Red Cross is one of the first responders in all emergencies. They're an organisation that works with and relies on the very large number of volunteers that they engage with. So I'd encourage any of you to get in touch with your local branch of the British Red Cross. If you have overseas experience and are interested in working in post-disaster situations, do reach out to Redar and get involved. Go on some of their courses. I say that if you're going to be a humanitarian engineer, it's a decision for life. It's not just for Christmas. It's not glamorous. It's very tough, and it's really just a commitment to use your skills in a different way. I think frankly, designing schools and hospitals is humanitarian engineering. The National Health Service are calling at the moment for help. I'm sure that there is help that they need from the engineering community. And I'm a great believer, if you really want to do something, you can. I tell my 2 kids, you can do anything in life you want, as long as you want to do it enough. But hopefully that's a few clues. But
tip.
I'm more than happy for any of you to sort of reach out, get in touch, if you got more specific questions about getting into this world.
I'm sure you'll be bombarded. That's a very kind offer. Thank you very much indeed. Vince, one of our trustees actually from WES, has asked another question, which I think is actually quite an interesting point. So there's only a couple of female MPs who have an engineering background, or even MPs in general have an engineering background. Nadeem Zahawi and Elizabeth chimed in saying there's Chi Onwar as well. But how do we get more engineers into positions of influence such as Parliament, do you think?
It's an extremely good question. I think it is really desperate that we do not have anyone in the government who is an engineer. There are a handful of people who have engineering backgrounds in the Houses of Parliament. I don't think there's anyone who's a fully qualified engineer, but I may be wrong about that. And it's not just the women, it's men. When you look at governments overseas in countries like China, which is really, very, very progressive in terms of technology, a very significant amount of their government is, of the Communist Party are engineers. The head of the UN is an engineer. So I think this is something that we do have to do something about. And I would love it if it was something that WES felt that they wanted to tackle, because I think just even convening the people that you know about in politics, who have got some form of technical background, is really essential. The challenges we're facing in terms of climate change are huge, and we need people in government to be making really informed decisions. And I think we need to have some people in government who have got really technical backgrounds. But I'm not volunteering to stand, so don't look at me.
I wasn't going to follow it up with that question, don't worry. But thank you. Yeah, I think it's hugely important and very difficult, very intractable. Another couple of questions that I'll conflate. So Javette's asked a question about how we can, particularly women engineers, can integrate sustainable or environmentally friendly materials or techniques into their jobs. What steps or lessons, how can we fight for these sustainable designs? And particularly if we think about the extra cost potentially, so the cost challenge. So how do you get that sort of that business case over the line, other than trusting people to have their heart in the right place?
Yeah, well, in my experience, nothing much happens without a sound business case behind it, and it takes a lot of effort to create that. What I said was, I mean very deeply. I think we have immense capabilities as engineers, but we do need to combine that with confidence and courage, so that we're willing to step up and challenge the status quo. Every time I hear from people, oh, we can't do something because it costs more, I think the elephant's walked into the room. I think that's an excuse that is often used, because actually what we don't want to do is necessarily invest the effort to create that business case. And the cost of that effort is relatively small compared to the sort of the difference in the capital cost of something. There's far too little at the moment out there in terms of technical guidance, in terms of precedent, to use materials other than traditional engineering materials. Some companies are being immensely progressive in trying to change their supply chains. And I see that happening more and more, because scope 3 emissions, which are the emissions that are to do with your supply chains, are becoming more and more important. And so that's forcing people to actually think about the energy consumed in the materials, because it's part of their responsibility. It's not the responsibility of someone else down the line. I think there needs to be a lot more investment in these alternative building technologies. So the ones I mentioned in my talk, stone masonry, bamboo construction, timber construction, these are very underused at the moment. There's a very exciting new initiative called Building the Future by the Loudest Foundation. So if you Google Building the Future, you'll find that, which is very purposefully promoting timber construction. And I hope that there'll be all sorts of different fora, bubbling up to actually promote these other forms. We're just trying to start one in Indonesia to do a big push on bamboo construction.
Thank you so much. And I have to say there are a plethora more questions, but I'm afraid we've run out of time. So if you have a look in the chat, there's all sorts of praise and enthusiasm and, oh my goodness, responses to your amazing presentation. So thank you so much for joining us, Dame Jo, and we've been truly thrilled to have you, and you really have been inspirational. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks to WES for getting me started. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And now we move on to the next part of our evening, which is the Karen Burt Memorial Award. So Kathy is our head judge. Over to you, Kathy.
Hello, Catherine Critchley. The Karen Burt Memorial Award is presented in recognition of the best newly chartered female engineer. It's now in its 23rd year, and it's a prestigious title that recognises the candidate's excellence and potential in practice of engineering. It highlights the importance of having chartered status, as well as offering recognition to contributions made by the candidates to the promotion of the engineering professions. Dr. Karen Burt was a tireless campaigner for the recruitment and retention of women in science and engineering. From her own experience and her extensive research, she was regarded as an expert in the management of career breaks and women returners to engineering. From business acquisition manager at WES to establishing the Centre of Advanced Instrumentation Systems within University College London, her career was abruptly ended by a devastating stroke. Every year now, the Women's Engineering Society invites the professional engineering institutions, of which there are many that aren't listed here, but all are invited, to nominate their best newly chartered female engineer, from which the winner is chosen. WES received 12 nominations this year, and in alphabetical order by PEI, as follows. We have Mivy James from the British Institute of Computer Science. We have Aga Jazika from the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation. We have Vaishnavi Balachandra from the Chartered Institute of Water and Environmental Management. We have Maha Khan from the Energy Institute. We have Eleanor Earl from the Institute of Civil Engineers. We have Tola Osini from iChemie, Institute of Chemical Engineers. We have Sahara Danesh. We have Laura Reed from Institute of Engineering Designers. Sorry about that. Now we have Sahara Danesh from the Institute of Engineering and Technology. We have Cleminta Jarova from Institute of Fire Engineers. And we have Dr. Sinsi Su from the Institute of Mechanical Engineering, and apologies to anybody whose name I pronounced wrong. And Professor Sarah Cartmel from the Institute of Materials, Minerals and Mining. And Stephanie Jones from the Royal Aeronautical Society. So this year's winner of the Karen Burt Memorial Award is Eleanor, Earl, and I forgot where she's from, sorry. If I can just say something about Eleanor, we had a really tough time judging this year, as you can see from the sheer amount of applications that we had. And we felt that there was a lot of very good candidates, but Eleanor's clear passion and drive for making engineering diverse and inclusive, particularly in her area of expertise around humanitarian water provision and development is inspiring. Her volunteer work with the Social Mobility Foundation and the Girls Network in the past 6 years highlights her determination to make engineering accessible to all, and her launching of the National STEM Ambassador Network at Arup shows her commitment within her organisation to make a difference to the outreach in STEM. Her ambition to set up a podcast to showcase initiatives around the world that have supported communities strive towards UN Sustainability Development Goals through implementing nature-based drainage infrastructure shows her continued commitment both to her profession and to her promotion of key ways engineering makes a difference to lives around the world. Eleanor is both a clear advocate for engineering and a wonderful tour de force in championing wider accessibilities to the profession, and myself as the head judge and the other judges really felt that she is a very deserving winner.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for the kind introduction. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, I can. Thank you, Eleanor.
Excellent. Wow. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm honoured to be awarded the Karen Burt Memorial Award. And firstly, I would like to congratulate all the other nominees. They're all fantastic. There are so many people I'd like to thank for their support and kindness in my journey. Too many to name individually, and I really hope you know who you all are. Many of them are watching tonight, and you are my engineering heroes. Thank you for this opportunity to present to you this evening about my journey so far. I'm a proud environmentalist, civil engineer, and STEM ambassador with a passion for sustainable drainage systems. So I do hope you don't find my presentation a draining experience. I should warn you, I do love my puns, so please go with the flow if you will. Now, before I get accused of misinforming you, I should say I'm only going to take you to parts of the world, and unfortunately we've only got time for 7 drains, but that doesn't have quite the same ring to it. My passion for the environment, civil engineering, and in particular drainage has taken me physically and virtually now around the world. After studying in Cardiff and completing summer placements in England, Wales, and Jamaica, which you can just see highlighted in blue here, I graduated and was based in London for 5 years. I then spent a year working in Hong Kong. And last year, I started a PhD at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, where my work focuses on flood resilience in the Pacific Islands, albeit remotely from the UK for now due to the pandemic. I've been consistently inspired and encouraged by so many people and organisations on this journey so far, too many to mention individually. I've highlighted the places globally on this map I've worked with to help manage surface water, but I've worked in other places too, and I've been motivated by so many other projects around the world, even ones not related to drainage. I hope to take you on a short journey of just some of my most treasured projects, sharing with you the lessons I've learned along the way, which I think go far beyond drainage. And I really hope will resonate with you and your experiences, no matter where you live, work, or study. My interest in sustainable drainage systems started in Llanelli, Wales, whilst on a summer placement. Here I learnt the importance of outcomes rather than outputs. In Llanelli, like many towns and cities around the UK, the combined foul and stormwater sewers have to cope with both rainfall and sewage. During periods of heavy rain, the network was becoming overwhelmed, increasing the risk of sewage flooding, and it can be easy to get carried away by shiny, new, resource-rich infrastructure. But through developing one of the largest digital catchment models ever built, this pioneering retrofit of sustainable drainage systems avoided the need for costly downstream infrastructure. By using these sustainable methods, informed by data collection, analysis, and insight, other outcomes were also achieved, including improving biodiversity, reducing pollution, and enhancing the streetscape. This case study from Llanelli, I believe, perfectly illustrates the change in practices we've seen in many urbanised parts of the world. I often have to remind myself that drainage is almost an entirely man-made problem, as we've decided which areas we wish to keep dry. But the pursuit of this ambition requires resources and infrastructure which will face increased stress in the face of the climate emergency. Thus, a more resilient approach, balancing the needs of society and the environment, is needed. You may have heard of this referred as green-blue infrastructure, sustainable urban drainage systems. The list goes on. There's many different names for this. I think this transition is, which I've tried to present through this sketch, is a really exciting prospect as we move from more brittle and inflexible conventional design through to more adaptable self-healing system design tailored to the local ecology. Are the built environment and the natural environment separate? Are these lines now blurring? How can we better integrate Indigenous knowledge of our natural landscapes into our urban environments? These present new questions for engineering and society. And with these questions, I got to interrogate these further at summer school at TE Delft a couple of years ago during my summer holidays. With other water enthusiasts from over 40 different countries, we discussed how sustainable development needs to be at the heart of our cities. We were surrounded by inspiring projects in South Holland, including this playground, which is used as a temporary stormwater storage during high rainfall events. It's easy to see how all the sustainable development goals, from gender equality to responsible consumption and production, need to be woven into our drainage projects. Through my work in urban resilience with Arup and the Resilience Shift and others, I've begun to apply systems thinking in my work. I think it's incredibly exciting that something like drainage, which can be perceived negatively, can actually create a multitude of benefits, some of which are listed here, meaning that every cloud really does have a silver lining. Now, Dame Joe De Silva is a very hard act to follow on the topic of resilience. Throughout my career, I've learned about the need for resilience at all levels, whether that be personal, community, infrastructure, or even city resilience. I'm constantly reminded that it isn't the strongest that survive, but the ones most adaptable to change. For me, this picture of teenage climate champions epitomises this. Here, I wove together my joy from youth outreach and coupled this with my passion for climate resilience. And through collaborating with the community, we developed many small projects, from street greening to managing drinking water quality and solid waste, to improve resilience in a small community called Match Colony in Dhaka in the capital of Bangladesh. Adaptation, and specifically the ability to learn, unlearn and relearn, has been a key lesson. Now, I bet you didn't think that I was going to show you a picture of paving in this presentation. This picture could come from almost anywhere in London, the UK, or beyond for that matter. Despite my best efforts, I didn't manage to persuade the rest of the team that instead of using granite transported from the other side of the world, we could use recycled concrete from the UK, or even replace this entirely with vegetation in places. But even though this decision was made 5 years ago, I feel I'm now equipped with new tools to support more sustainable decisions. It was only recently I began to be able to quantify the carbon used in the infrastructure I design. Perhaps if I'd been able to say for this small site that the local concrete alternative would have saved the project an equivalent annual carbon emission of about 130 UK citizens, we might have taken a different approach. I'm also encouraged by the new biodiversity net gain policy in the UK, and new tools and approaches will be needed to achieve this. So even though I graduated just 7 years ago, it's incredibly exciting to see the pace we're now moving at. I also learnt this lesson in Bangladesh. Here, more than 900,000 Rohingya are now living in camps south of Cox's Bazar in southeast Bangladesh, in one of the world's largest refugee settlements. I worked here with the Organisation of Migration, also known as IOM, and other humanitarian organisations working locally to develop surface water management training tailored to the camps, including the use of nature-based solutions. Most of the infrastructure seen in this image was built since 2017. Sometimes our industry can feel glacial, but this illustrated to me how positive change can occur when we all work together. And indeed, everyone has a part to play. This picture shows a community organisation I met in Nairobi, who had worked together to restore the floodplain and create this beautiful green space in the centre of their community. This was definitely the first time I planted an avocado tree during a meeting, but hopefully not the last. Community is a ship, and everyone ought to be included and able to take the helm. I think this is really important, and it is totally epitomised by this case study. More recently, I moved to Hong Kong, and it's the first time I've lived more than just a couple of months outside the UK. You may recognise this famous view of Hong Kong. Gazing from Victoria Peak towards Victoria Harbour, it's easy to see how humans have played a huge part in this landscape. But I also learned here that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. This is also a picture of Hong Kong. I was part of a team working on one of the first sustainable drainage projects in Hong Kong, protecting the Tung Chung River, which you can see in this photo, from urban development. And digital technology was key to our ability to rapidly optimise our designs. Now, I got a D in my GCSE IT, so it seems unlikely that digital technology would play such a key part in my career. But thanks to many different people, including the IC policy team, for taking me under their wing, they in fact enabled me to support the writing of the State of the Nation Digital Transformation Report. And this really widened my comfort zone, and it's played a key role in the recent projects that I've been part of. And I'm a huge advocate for digital being used as a means of tackling complex challenges we face in our industry if we create the right boundary conditions. Now, if these stories have inspired you, I'm actually launching a podcast, as it was mentioned, in the new year, and I've already started editing stories from Bangladesh and Kurdistan. But I look forward to exploring stories from all around the world, and perhaps you've got some ideas to share with me. All of these ideas I've applied to drainage, but I also think they apply to women in engineering. For example, everyone has a part to play, as we've seen tonight through the Menas Allies Prize, or making sure that youth outreach activities lead to the outcomes we all wish to see. Given there's only 11% of the engineering workforce that are female, I'm grateful that our role in the industry is being celebrated, and a huge thank you to the Women's Engineering Society for continuing to bang this drum. My hope is that being a female engineer will not define my career. Was I picked because I was female? Am I just making up the numbers? Are all questions I regularly ask myself, and I really hope I won't have to ask these questions later in my career. I hope that if we're better able to apply these ideas in our industry in my lifetime, that I will be an engineer that happens to be female and not singled out for being a female engineer. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Eleanor, and truly inspirational words for somebody who's really at the start of their career journey. And I particularly loved your sum up there where you said you're hoping that being a female engineer won't be remarkable, and indeed at WES we often say that it would be lovely to not be needed and for us to be literally a historic and much loved society rather than a much needed society currently. So thank you for that, and congratulations on your award and for giving the presentation. That was really great. There are a few questions coming through in the chat, so hopefully you've got time for us just to pose a couple. Vince has said that, just moving around the screen in front of me there. Vince has asked, how do we balance the push for more housing in the UK with more sustainable infrastructure development? As very often the two seem divergent.
Yeah, I think that's a really tough question. I think we have to rethink why we need the housing in the first place a little bit. And I think there's other ways we can house people, other ways we can utilise the building stock we already have and retrofit. There's, you know, many empty buildings as we've seen during the pandemic, and maybe we can utilise the infrastructure that we already have in new ways. And I think digital can help us unlock that, as well as policy and all the other levers that exist. But I'm certainly not an expert in this, and it's obviously a very difficult question, otherwise we'd have solved it already. So I hope that's just some of the ideas that I have. But you're right, it is a huge challenge, but I think if we look at the Sustainable Development Goals holistically, I think we can go a very long way of achieving that, and also trying to get investment from many different organisations and creating multifunctional infrastructure, I think has a long way to go. And I showed that case study in the Netherlands, and I think they're really expert in the Netherlands at doing that, getting different government departments to speak to each other and help fund the same projects and pool resources.
And that the picture that you showed of that playground, what a fabulous idea! Just simply inspirational. Why don't we have more of that all over the place? Another question. So you talked about digital there, and you also quite openly said that you'd got a D in your GCSE and had to and were then coached by some colleagues and other people to learn to love digital, and clearly you're a massive advocate for it now. How do you have any advice about how you go about sort of taking what could be something that you perceive as a weakness and turning it into a strength, or turning it into something that you find essential to your work?
Yeah, I mean, I've just been really lucky with the opportunities that have been presented in front of me. So, you know, I remember clearly, so the reason I got to be part of the IC policy team is I was elected to be one of the president's apprentices, and I remember vividly sitting around the table, and there were two roles. One was a youth outreach role, which I thought I could nail. I've done loads of that. I'm really, you know, I'm a really good candidate. And then this one on digital transformation, I thought, I don't really know very much about that, but I guess I could learn. And I thought, well, you know, I will endeavour to continue doing my youth outreach, no matter whether I have that, you know, had taken up that opportunity or not. So I went for the other one. And I just guess it's those little leaps of faith. They don't seem like very big steps at the time, but I think they will slowly add up and make a huge difference, don't they?
So baby steps.
Baby steps, yeah. and you know, it's not just about getting out of your comfort zone, you know, widen it. And I hope I've shown that in my work, is that it's not just something I sort of stepped into just for an hour or a day or a week. It's something that I've stepped into, and then that's become my comfort zone, as it were.
Yeah, really passionate about it. It really shows through. A few more questions coming through, so I'll just press on. Yvette says, did you face any hardships as a woman in engineering in your career, and how did you get through them?
I think I'd be lying if I said I hadn't. I know, sadly, people have faced far bigger hardships than me that I've heard about in my, with my fellow colleagues and friends and peers. I guess it's personal resilience. I think we've all been reminded this year, particularly about our mental health and how, you know, there's so many uncertainties that exist around us. And I think we've all got to really look out for each other. You never really know what's going on behind somebody's, the front that they put on. And I think if we can all just be a little bit kinder to each other, that goes a very long way. So I guess that would be my advice, that, yeah, I hope I've been there for other people and just done, just something very small, and it's just made their day a little bit better and helped them bring their best self to work on that particular day.
Very wise words indeed. And we've time for just one more. And so Anna has asked, have there been any engineering solutions in the small communities that you visited that have surprised you?
Gosh, too many to list, to be honest. I've seen all sorts of things. Yeah, I think it goes back to my point about learning and unlearning and relearning. Like, we've all got to do it every day. So I guess I may have been surprised in the moment, but I've just learned to kind of embrace it. And I'd like to think I have a kind of global outlook at maybe the range of countries I've had the privilege to work in. And I just absolutely love working with local communities and finding out how they perceive things, and often it's very different to how I perceive them, and I learn a lot from that process. So yeah, I guess yeah, all sorts of strange and wonderful things, but too many to list.
Oh, thank you so much. So thank you, Eleanor. That was a great presentation, and well done for fielding some quite challenging questions at the end there.
Thanks
But
so much to everyone.
many congratulations on your award. Very richly deserved. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
And before I hand over to Elizabeth to wrap up, there were just a couple of points that I wanted to pull out of the chat, which I thought were great. So Dawn Bomford was saying hi to WES members, and hopefully we can all meet up again in person next year. And I have to say, I really echo that comment, because although it's been lovely having the presentations and being able to do a bit of Q&A, it's just not the same as meeting in person. And, you know, having been, if we'd have had Dame Jo in the room with us, and we'd have been able to, you know, have a coffee or a drink with her afterwards and ask her some questions informally, it would have been amazing. So I do absolutely echo those, and I encourage everyone to read through the chat, because there's been much love coming through for the presentations. All of the nominees, frankly, everybody could have won an award. They were also amazing. So thank you so much. And I'll now hand over to Elizabeth to wrap up for this evening. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Dawn. And it's been an absolute pleasure to see everybody here, and to see where they've all come from. So we've had people who are here from Australia, from Boston, Massachusetts in America, from Tunisia and other places as well. And I'm thrilled that people now, because we do this remotely, feel that they can attend this wonderful event. And I've been very inspired. You know, we've had Rose Russell, who was so humble about her win, when actually she was outstanding among the candidates, and Dr. Andy Palmer, who has done so much for women in engineering, and also is having his own glittering career. And then Dame Joe De Silva, who has just basically done so much for people all over the world, particularly in very challenging circumstances. And I think we all recognise there are aid workers that go out in these disasters, but we fail to remember that there are engineers who go out, who help to build the camps and rebuild the infrastructure, which is why we celebrated this year the top 50 women in engineering as engineering heroes. And Dame Jo was one of the winners. And I must say, by the way, every time we run the WE 50, we anonymise all of the entries. It's done strictly on the name and career level. So we'd have said Jo, senior career, and then her citation of 400 words. So we wouldn't have known who she was. And it was a great joy when we anonymised everybody and saw that she had won, because I know she's just such an inspiring woman. And then we have Eleanor, who's actually worked with Jo in the past, and you know, she's going out to Australia to do her PhD and to do more work on international development. And again, I'm really, really inspired and thrilled by her. And Cyril Hilson, who is Karen Burt's father, is in the audience this evening to say thank you. Just to note that there is a prize money of £1,000 for the Karen Burt winner, and that will be sent over to Eleanor very soon to help her with her migration to Australia. So we've had a wonderful evening. Thank you all for attending. I'm very pleased to announce that the theme for 2022 for INWED and for all of our events will be Imagine the Future. And the theme for the top 50 women in engineering will be Inventors and Innovators. So if you know of a woman who has created or improved a product or a process who you think should be celebrated as one of the top 50 women in engineering, then look out for the opening of nominations in February on International Day for Women and Girls in Science. It's been a delight to have you, to host you all, and to have these wonderful talks and presentations. I wish you all the very best wishes for the season. I hope you all stay safe and well from the pandemic, and have a lovely new year. Thank you.